Guys, welcome to the channel. I'm going solo today on this topic, and we're going to talk about everything that you need to do before you leave the US and to travel full time. So it's something that you don't want to miss, because if you are thinking about retiring and going to travel the world and where to start, this video will be very helpful for you. Now, I'm not claiming that this will cover every single thing that you need to do, because in your situation there might be some additional things, or maybe some of this will not apply to you, but this is a really good, solid starting point.
Hi, we're Josh and Petra, early retirees traveling the world slowly while sharing honest insights about retirement and life on the road. Join us and share in the journey.
And so we felt that way, very overwhelmed. What do we do to start this process, right? What, some of our biggest things was like, how do we get rid of all the stuff in our house? What are the financials? What about healthcare? What if we're, forced to fly, home? Do we want to be gone all the time? Are we going to keep some of our belongings in a storage unit at a friend's house? How do I tell my work? When should I do all of these things? And so those are some of the things that we're going to talk about today. Most people, when they start thinking about long-term travel, the first thing they think about is packing. But that is not necessarily the focus or the big picture. It is about unwinding your entire life in the United States, your finances, your home, your healthcare, your identity systems, and rebuilding it in a way where you can access that from anywhere in the world. And if you just miss one step, it can cost you thousands, or even worse, your entire trip. So let's start with the money setup, the thing that can break your trip the fastest, right? So before you leave, you need to think about ways to access your money. In our opinion, you should have at least 2 debit cards, 2 credit cards, and these are from different banks, right? Because if you are using a debit card to withdraw cash from your checking account in local currency, but something happens to that card, you need to have another way to access that card. So having 2 debit cards. Some banks will allow you to have a bank account and several sub accounts. So they might let you have like 2 different checking accounts, 2 savings accounts, is a possible, but I would also recommend it from 2 different banks, because if somebody gets a hold of your debit card and you only have the one bank, there's a possibility then that all of your finances are in jeopardy. So if you have 2 different accounts, you might have a primary, but a secondary where you can actually transfer money to, you can still access your account. Same thing with credit cards. So if you are using credit cards to make your purchases, but again, something happens to the number, you lose it, anything could happen. Of course, you can always call that credit card, they will cancel it, but what do you do for money and for cash until then, right? So having at least 2 of those. Some people recommend even more, maybe like 3 to 4 credit cards, right? Again, you don't ever want to rely just on one bank primarily. You want to have multiple ways to get your money. You also want to really consider having accounts where you have no foreign transaction fees, you have access to online banking, and where you can set up paying your bills, because it doesn't matter where you're going to be, you're going to have bills, where you can do that through the bank, whether that's bill pay or it is set up automatically. Because really the last thing that you want to worry about is like a missed bill while you're in another country. So then healthcare, and this is one that there's a lot of questions about, people fret about, like, how can I do this? And if they don't think through a plan, they can regret it later. So before you leave, you may want to consider going to your doctor and getting a full physical, like a dental check and vision check. And if you're going to be gone for a long period of time, making sure that you can access your healthcare records electronically in case you're in a country where you need to get access to those for help with a physician or something, right? But then what do? Do you get long-term travel insurance, or are you going to wing it? You know, some of it, I've seen people do both. Where they're going, healthcare is good in the countries that they're going to, and it's reasonable, so they're like, I don't really need it. Or some people are like, nope, I'm going to have it. So it's really about whatever makes you feel more comfortable, but it's something that you definitely need to think about ahead of time. As far as my husband and I, we purchased a plan through Safety Wing, and not only does it have health insurance, but it also has travel insurance, and it's put together and it's built for nomads. Now you do have to take a look at the policy. For us, we know that it does not cover pre-existing conditions, but it will take care of any conditions that come up that weren't pre-existing. It does some limited coverage in the United States, but for a very short period of time, because as we know, insurance in the United States is very expensive. So this is reasonable insurance that is meant to meet your needs while traveling long term. Any prescriptions? So you may want to make sure that you've got some prescriptions with you when you go, like enough to get you to the point where, you know, because when you first get into a country and if you need prescriptions due right away, that might feel very overwhelming. So at least to get you going, because then you have to learn the system wherever you're at. How do you get a prescription filled? Do you just take what you have, like the prescription bottle, into a pharmacist and they fill it? Do you have to see a doctor somewhere to get another prescription and then go have it filled, like kind of like we do in the US? Should you be bringing a prescription or a note from your current doctor with you, you know? And so those are all things to, you know, think about. I know my husband, he went ahead, wasn't sure with one of his medications how easily it would be to access overseas. So we went ahead and we have a note from the physician to get it. Now, next, what about your home and stuff? Whew. This can be the hardest stuff for most people because it's your stuff, you know, like I'll never forget when I had let my mom know, like, hey, this is what we're going to do. That was the first thing she said, what about your stuff, you know? Now, for us, we decided we were going to sell it all because we really weren't keeping much. We kept a couple of totes of memorabilia at our family's house. So like, you know, pictures and diplomas and my teddy bear from when I was 2 years old, but everything else we got rid of. Some people choose to do that. Some people don't. Some people get rid of some stuff, but then they keep other things, and maybe they store it at a family or a friend's place. Maybe they get a storage unit. Then the house, like if you own a home, what do you do with that? Do you sell it? Do you rent it out? Which could bring some cash flow while you're gone. But then how do you manage that while you're on the road? So do you have to hire a property manager, right? So these decisions are things that you need to think about, and they're all personal. There's no one right answer that fits everything. For us, we sold the house. We didn't want to deal with a property manager while we're gone, because if we come back, or when we come back to the US, we'll find something else. And we pretty much, like I said, we sold everything. That was our way of doing it. You might be different. We have heard from many people that had saved stuff and rented like a storage unit, and in the end, you know what they said? We wish we wouldn't have done it, and just kept only what we needed at friends or family. If you have that option, some people may not have that option, but in the end, basically what they were saying is they should have kept less. That way you feel freer. And I felt the same way. Honestly, like when we decided to go do this, I was surprised about how I reacted and how I felt. I felt like a weight had lifted off my shoulders, and I was pretty excited to basically know that except for the few totes I had at my sister's house, that pretty much everything that I own is going to be in a backpack and a rolling suitcase. That's it. It was a freeing and liberating experience. So what about your mail, your identity, and any legal things while you're gone, right? So this is kind of where things can get a little bit technical, but it is really crucial. And so there are many virtual mailbox companies out there. We have done a video where we went to South Dakota and used a system in South Dakota called America's Mailbox. You can look for that video. We also changed our residency to South Dakota as well, and we talk about that in that video. But these virtual mailbox services, what they do is, in essence, they're a post office. So you have your mail, either they're forwarded, although a lot of things we pretty much just we can access electronically, but it goes to your mailbox service. They will scan like the outside of it for you, and then you can tell them what to do with it. You can tell them to shred it, throw it away, forward it on to somebody, or open it up and scan it and let you see what is inside so that you know what it is. Because let's face it, not all outside of the envelopes give you a lot of information. Sometimes they do, like when it says important tax information, it's for your taxes, right? Anyway, so there are lots of different companies out there, and different systems, to check in, but that's one of the things you can do. But you also want to try to digitize anything that you can. So things like your insurance, your credit cards. You can set up like Apple Pay. You've got the mobile apps, and you can use virtual cards with them. Also, like your passport. So make sure you're taking a picture of your passport and keeping it in a safe place, so that for any reason, if something happens to your passport, at least you have a copy with the number. You can find your local or the local embassy or consulate in order to get a new one made for you. And so basically what you're thinking is all of these things that I have, if it gets lost somehow, how can I access it? What information do I have? How do I have a backup, right? So essence, it's a second plan, and it's not that you don't have anything, but if you lose it, you still have access to it in some way by digitizing it. Okay. You also may want to consider creating a will, giving somebody power of attorney in case of emergencies. Healthcare directives are things that should be thought about before you go as well. They're not necessarily fun, but they can be incredibly important, right? Now, what about phone and technology, right? So our phones have become something that doesn't leave our hands or away from us very often. It's a lifeline, right? And they definitely are that when we're traveling. And so when you're thinking about when you're traveling, yes, you'll need your phone, and you still need a US number, especially for like two-factor authorization. So if you are trying to log into your bank account and your bank account is like, whoa, you're overseas, let's do a two-factor authorization, you need a US number to do that. So you need a phone to do that, right? But it can get very expensive international plans. So even though many carriers have some kind of international plan, continuous use and roaming can be very expensive. So one thing that a lot of people do is they will get an eSIM, but in order to have an eSIM on your phone has to be unlocked. So making sure that your phone is unlocked before you travel so that you can have an eSIM for international travel to make sure your bills aren't outrageous, but then also you'll be able to use the two-factor authorization when you need it. And so some of the things that you may want to consider right before you travel are things like canceling any subscriptions that you no longer need. If your streaming services that you may not want or cannot access while you're traveling, go ahead and cancel those. Gym memberships or anything like that. For long-term travel, I would also recommend booking your first accommodations, because again, you don't want to get to your first spot and be like, okay, now where do we go? That can be a costly mistake, because many hotels or even Airbnbs price things in a dynamic pricing, and so if you wait to the last minute, you're going to be paying premium. So you may want to go ahead and at least get your first one, if not maybe first couple accommodations booked and ready for you for your trip. Maybe not necessarily your whole trip, but at least the first couple of stops, right? For us, we had some group travel trips already planned before we decided to go do this. So those were already planned for us. And then we did book several months out accommodations. All of our bookings are where we can cancel by a certain date and we don't lose any money or any points, because we did book a lot of hotels using hotel points. So that way, if we want to pivot or shift, because we are like, oh, we should go here, we've heard great things about this, we can do that, right? Even though we have those things booked. So if you are going to book further out, try to go with where you can cancel. I know it gets very tempting to be like, oh, we can save all this money if we pay now. But if you pay now, check to see the details, because you may not be able to cancel and you've lost your money. So what do people forget? There always seems to be things that people forget, and quite honestly, I'm very happy that we are visiting family, because before we head out, we closed on our house and we flew out the same day, and along the way I was like, oh my gosh, I should have brought this, or I didn't need this, but I'm going to replace it for something better. And Amazon has been great, because we could order our items and have it sent to our family's place. So that way, 3 weeks from the time that we started, when we actually get on the cruise ship to leave, we should have everything that we have. So forgetting things will probably happen. But some things you may want to double check before before you're leaving is like a backup debit card. Can you access certain documents offline? So if you're in a place where you can't get connected to Wi-Fi or something, can you get to your documents? So like if you need your passport number, birth certificate, or your TSA number or something like that, like you have that digital copy of those that you can access easily without being online. Emergency contact plan. What are we going to do if this happens? And honestly, are you emotionally ready? I think we are. We're still a little nervous for us, but I think we're ready. It's realizing that this is a complete life change, and are we physically and emotionally ready? So kind of in closing, leaving the US to travel the world long term isn't necessarily about seeing new places, which is definitely part of it. It is about designing a life that's going to work everywhere, because we're going to go to many different places. And the more that we prepare before we leave, the more freedom that we'll have once we get there. So if you're planning to retire and travel the world like we are, please make sure to subscribe to our channel and follow along with our journey. Give us a thumbs up on the video, and feel free to make comments if there's other things that you guys have prepared or thought about or might be useful to those that are going to be doing this process. Leave them in the comments. We very much appreciate it. And we're also, in the description, we're going to attach a checklist of some of these things that we've talked about today, so then that way you are more prepared. But just know, again, it may not be a checklist that is comprehensive for you and your needs, but it's a place to get you started. So guys, thank you so much for following along. We really do appreciate it, and we will see you in the post. Have a good day. Bye-bye.